in this webinar on North Macedonia, specifically about the political situation in North Macedonia. And after elections this year, local elections that took place in autumn, but also many other political developments in North Macedonia deserves to really be talked about, and about the current happenings within the country, but also very much regarding EU integration. And there's no better person to do this together with as European Forum and HSP than Alexander Spasov. Welcome. You're a university professor of law in Skopje and also president for the Foundation for Progressive Change and Social Studies. So great to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us, Alexander, for this Q&A. I'm Emil Bongaerts, by the way, working for European Forum for Democracy and Solidarity. And we work also together, as I said, with the Italian Foundation CESP, with whom Alexander is also writing an article, which will be live next week on the website Balkan Focus. So there you can also find much more analysis on North Macedonia, but we'll already preview this in this webinar today. Before delving into the first question, I want, of course, to welcome you viewers and also very much invite you to pose your questions to Alexander and me in the Q&A. So the Q&A is live in the YouTube, and you can just pose your questions there throughout this webinar. We'll take around 45 minutes, so don't wait too long, and then I will put the questions directly to Alexander here. And you can also rewatch this webinar on the YouTube. So if you want to forward it to anyone, of course, feel free to do so. Anyone who's interested in North Macedonian politics should definitely hear about this, I would say. So yeah, let's just delve into the first question, Alexander, because we had local elections very recently in North Macedonia. It has been an important moment again in the country. And can you tell a little bit about the results and dynamics around these local elections that took place? Thanks.
Thank you, Emil. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm really honored to be your guest on this webinar today. Thank you to the European Forum, to FMS, and to CESP. And I'm looking forward discussing with you and with our viewers on YouTube this important topic, I would say, I mean, not only for North Macedonia, but also for the regional development in the Western Balkans. So the first question, that's the newest, the local elections. The local elections ended in the beginning of November. They were in 2 rounds. Part of the mayors were elected in the first round. The other part were in the second round. The municipal councils, they were elected in, I mean, these are the local parliaments, were elected in the first round, because we elect mayors according to the majority system. I mean, first past the post, and then the municipal councils, we're electing according to the proportional system. What is interesting about this local election? So first, some general information, and then I would contextualize the situation. I mean, regarding the elections, the results are more than expected. I mean, the ruling party, we call it from the Macedonian bloc, because we have like 2 ruling parties always in coalition in the government. That's the conservative MRD won landslide the elections, so there is no doubt who won the elections, although sometimes when it comes to local elections, there are not clear winners, because we have winner in every municipality, and we have 80 municipalities and the city of Skopje as a special unit of as a special municipality with special status. But in this case, Maroda is a clear winner of the local elections. Among the so-called Albanian political parties, we had a more interesting electoral race. There, it was unclear until the very end who would actually prevail, whether it would be the former ruling party, DUI, the Democratic Union for Integration, they were in power for almost 20 years, or the new coalition of several Albanian parties called FLEN, and part of them are split parties from DUI. What in the end we saw that although DUI performed well in terms of the votes they got, we can conclude that the VLAN, so the governing coalition, also won among Albanians, or in the so-called Albanian bloc of party. Unfortunately, we have this ethnic voting. So more or less, ethnic Albanians vote for ethnic Albanian parties, and ethnic Macedonians and the others vote for so-called ethnic Macedonian party. Although we thought we overcame this in 2016, 2017, but unfortunately we returned to that situation. Next thing, what is important about local elections is that the turnout was very low. It was around 50% in the first round, and something above 40% in the second round, which is a very low turnout for our circumstances. And it is not a low turnout by accident. It shows I would say increasing apathy, political apathy, but in the society, but I would say general societal apathy and distrust of the voters in the institutions, and especially in politicians and political parties. And the most recent opinion polls clearly show that there is no political force in the country that really enjoys the support of the majority of voters. I mean, one thing are the elections, and the other thing is the majority in the society. And furthermore, it's interesting that in 4 municipalities, we didn't manage to elect a mayor on these elections because there is a threshold of 1/3 of the voters. And among these 4 municipalities, one is also, I would say, a large municipality, the town of Gostivar. They didn't manage to have at least 1/3 of the voters going to the polls, which is to the voting stations, which is also a sign on the one hand of disappointment and societal apathy, but also on the other hand is a sign that many of the people are actually not living in the country, but left the country. They still have their residence, but formally in the country, but they actually left the country. So we see on this example, we could see the scale of mass immigration that happened in our country, but not only in our countries, in all of the countries of the Western Balkans. So to conclude, I mean, it is clear that the ruling coalition, I mean, both parts of this ruling coalition confirmed their political legitimacy, and they can continue governing the country. There were some speculations that if DUI managed to win over VLEN, on these elections, because it was not expected that the Social Democrats would win over Vămără Dăpămână, we may face snap elections in the spring. Now we can say that the snap elections are ruled out, so it seems, because there is no need for snap elections when the ruling coalition practically confirmed their victory from the parliamentary elections in 2024. And I would say for VLEN, even more. They confirmed even more, because at 2024, actually DUI won more votes than VLEN. Now it is clear that VLEN confirmed that, I mean, they are the ones that enjoy the confidence of the majority of those Albanian voters who went to the polling stations. So that is to conclude about the local elections.
Very clear overview, and indeed for the viewers also, if I'm correct, like the previous coalition was also the DUI party together with SDSM, and now the coalition is VLEN, this newer Albanian party with Vimro, right? So in that
VLEN
sense,
itself is a coalition of
it's
several.
also a coalition itself, yeah.
Yeah, so they are now in coalition since 2024. I mean, Vămără Dăpămână, although DUI technically won that elections among Albanian, Vămără Dăpămână said that they would not enter a coalition with DUI. Actually, the electoral campaign was of Vămără Dăpămână was more focused against DUI than against SDSM, against the Social Democrats, because according to many opinion polls, the ethnic Macedonians were very frustrated by the rule of DUI, but the performance of their ministers, especially between 2020 and 2024. And actually, Vămără Dăpămână saw a good opportunity to campaign against DUI in order to increase their performance on the last parliamentary elections. And they continued that campaign also on these local elections. And they found, I would say, a fertile ground for such kind of campaign. So it's doubtless that there is public support among ethnic Macedonians for this kind of campaign. I mean, the other question is how it will develop in the future. But as for now, it was clear that Vamaro Dapamane used that issue of frustration among ethnic Macedonians to campaign against that and to confirm their support. Although I must stress that if you look at the performance of all parties got fewer votes than they got a year and a half ago, especially Vamaro Dapamane, they got, I mean, 130,000 votes, which is a lot for Macedonian circumstances. So if you analyze the results, I think that no one can be satisfied from the electoral results, especially the ruling party Vamaro Dapamane, because they managed to lose more than 130,000 votes. And how they won landslide, it is because of the weak performance of the Social Democrats. That's the
Yeah.
only reason why they could win a landslide. If the Social Democrats were stronger, we would have had completely different results.
Yeah, and it's not often that you see elections where no one is satisfied, but this is one of those. And indeed, you also already attested to it with like Zumro kind of confirming their legitimacy or their position, but in a sense also this legitimacy, it seems is very much under pressure because of the very low turnout, and even like in some municipalities the turnout is even so low that it cannot confirm the result, and I think there have to be new elections probably, right?
Yes,
In
in
these four,
January.
yeah, in
It is
general, and then the reason you say also is this political apathy on the one hand, but also very much people not being in North Macedonia still. They migrated for economic reasons. So this is something I wanted to touch upon also later in relationship to the relationship with European Union. I think this political apathy is also very much because of that. But maybe one follow-up question is this political landscape now, what does it look like? So what is the role of the Social Democrats? And there are also new parties upcoming, and how do these kind of relate to each other?
So look, I mean, on the ruling side is clear, as I said. On the opposition side is not so clear. I mean, according to the results, both from 2024 parliamentary elections, but also local elections 2025, we can technically conclude that the Social Democrats remain the largest and most influential opposition party. Among all opposition parties, both, let's say, ethnic Macedonians and ethnic Albanians. I repeat that, although I personally hate these labels, but these are the circumstances, so I have to use that. But they are challenged. They are challenged. There is other opposition party that increased their performance, especially in the city of Skopje, the capital. That is very important. I mean, if you see other municipalities, they didn't perform much better compared to 2024, but in Skopje they performed much better. That's the party called in Macedonian Levica, or the left. It's a party of mixed social and national
Yeah, because I
populism.
heard they're called the left, but they're not so left.
No, it's a
Or
mixture of
yeah,
social and national populism in some issues. I mean, so-called national political issues. They can be even labeled as a national conservative party. But on the other hand, they also are a left party on social issues. I mean, even left populist party. So they managed to attract many young voters. And especially in Skopje in the second round, unfortunately, the candidate of the Social Democrats was not the one that went to the second round. It was the candidate of the ruling coalition and the candidate of this party called the Left, who had a very interesting kind of campaign. He attracted many young voters. He even increased, I would say, the turnout in Skopje because of these young voters that went to vote for him. I don't think that these were votes for his party directly, but many people were attracted. I mean, many people who wanted to vote against the government saw this opportunity as opportunity for protest votes. The campaign he had was a combination of campaign that Mamdani made in New York, and campaigns of populist movements in Europe. But I would say a very, I mean, technically very successful campaign, a very interesting campaign. And in the end, he scored a very good result compared to the candidate that now is the mayor of Skopje. The difference was only 30,000 votes. So even I think in the ruling coalition, they were astonished, I would say negatively surprised by the performance that this candidate did. So it showed, it was a clear message for the Social Democrats that, I mean, Social Democrats in future, among other things, I mean, the policy renewal, the strategy renewal, the renewal, the organizational renewal, they should also take another approach in political campaigning because the mainstream political campaigning is dying out in our country. I mean, that's clear. This campaign showed clearly that mainstreaming, especially in political campaigns, is dying out. I mean, kind of campaigns that mix, let's say, direct approach, soft populism are the future of political campaigning for sure. And Social Democrats, if they want to approach the politics realistically, must also take this into consideration without hesitating too much to enter these waters, I would say, political waters outside of the political mainstream.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. And what's your assessment there? It also touched upon the assessment of the how the Social Democrats, as they said, how they the Social Democratic Union of Macedonia, how they performed. Yeah, what's your assessment there, and what's the way forward? Because after 2024, devastating loss in the general elections, now also devastating loss in the local elections. So how do you see their position going forward? And I think, Alexander, we lost
Look, I mean, on a
you.
note,
Ah, you're
can
back.
do you see
Yeah,
me?
you're back.
Yes.
Yeah, you were
Okay.
disconnected for a second, but you're back now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
I heard the question.
Okay.
Look, on the positive note, I think that uh, in terms of votes, the Social Democrats stabilized. I mean, they lost some additional votes, but they are more or less now stabilized. That's on a positive note, but that's the single thing on a positive note. So it may serve as a good start, but they need, SDSM needs a substantial renewal in all aspects. First of all, organizational renewal. I mean, the party has a very good infrastructure that they inherited from the old communist party even, and they still have this infrastructure, although I would say that without more active members or political activists, because I'm preaching now exiting the mainstream, so members and activists I would use together. They cannot really renew the party, the party from within. Second, what the Social Democrats need are now clear policies, because negative campaigns, yes, they pay off to some extent, but in order to be perceived by the public, by the voters as a future ruling party, there needs to be a policy offer. And that the Social Democrats in the moment are lacking. They had a good attempt to develop a electoral program for these elections, but what they need is a new general program and general policies that would really show a new face of the party, not just face lifting, but really new face of the party in front of the voters. And finally, campaign strategies, as I said, the Social Democrats must encourage themselves, first of all, because the messages from the public are clear, to start grassroots campaigning, even, as I said, on this, to start a kind of social populism, I would say, in order to attract especially the young voters. Because if we see the characteristics of the people that are voting for the Social Democrats, is mostly older population that traditionally vote for the Social Democrats. I mean, those who vote the conservatives, the national conservatives, would continue voting them. But there is a lot of space to work, because we saw a low turnout, especially among young voters who are politically confused. They are not all necessarily progressive. What we see also now in the students' protests in Serbia, but there is a lot of potential for them to be attracted on certain issues to the Social Democrats. So I would suggest, and I said that publicly here on the night of the elections on TV, the Social Democrats must take completely different approach in campaigning in order to attract these people. And last but not least, what pays off always for the Social Democrats in the past, and I'm sure will pay off in the future, is building broad coalitions. Broad coalitions with civil society organizations, even with individuals, because that's the only way how Social Democrats are coming to power in North Macedonia, also in the past. And this is something that the Social Democrats should keep on and try it once again.
Yeah, but it's very interesting, and also it very much relates to the whole position of other social democratic large older parties across Europe that struggle with finding these new voter bases, and indeed it's very similar, like as we see in North Macedonia, that also the need is to be found to find these new younger populations and also to change the way of campaigning. So in that sense, it's very interesting to hear these experiences as well. So before continuing, like more on the discussion on also on the EU trajectory of North Macedonia, which is of course it very much in a sense relates also to these local elections and the political apathy that took place. We got a question from the chat, which is from uh, Peace. I won't tell the whole name because it's like a very long name, but thanks for the question. So it is high in the election results. It looks like there's very few women in major positions. How is it going on the diversity front?
Yes, that's. Thank you for this question. It's a very true conclusion. We have quotas for the parliament, but we don't have for mayoral candidates. We have quotas for municipal councils, so there is a good number of women as councillors. I mean, I would say deputies in the local parliaments. But not for mayoral candidates. So there are only a few women, but this is a situation that is repeating itself. Social Democrats were and are still champions in promoting gender equality. When you see the number of women that are part of the party leadership, but when it comes to candidates, especially when there are no obligatory quotas, they're not envisioned in the law. Most of the party practically follow the trends in the society, and the trends in society are that the society is still genuinely uh, conservative when it comes to women in politics. Of course, we have a woman president of the country, but I don't think she won because she was a woman or anything associated with gender equality. She won because she was supported by the ruling party. So this shows that it's very hard for women, especially if they do not have the support from established political parties. It's very hard for them to perform well on elections. So that's maybe we should think of also introducing a kind of quotas, because quotas prove to be very successful when it comes to female MPs, female councillors, deputies in the local parliaments. So we may also think of how to improve the number of women on mayoral position. I think now we have only 2, 3 women that managed to win the elections, and only several that were candidates.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for this answer. And maybe to continue on one more thing on the local election, what I heard is that many of the voters they also just did a blank vote or
Yes.
ripped their ballots. Were these voters also still part of the turnout? Because that also means were even more people that did turn out, but were also disillusioned. Like,
Technically, they are part of the turnout. So the real turnout is even lower than this turnout, because there were many invalid ballots. And these are also kind of protest votes, especially, I mean, they're both in the both rounds. And these are also ballots from people who said, I mean, I would vote, I would use my right, but then I would make my ballot invalid. So these are clear protest votes, and if you look the number of people that casted invalid ballots, they are actually third behind the
Third, yeah, that's
yeah, on the
but
third place behind the major parties and well ahead of the independent candidates.
yeah,
I
but
mean,
that's really, really a lot. Like in percentage wise, how much do you think it is then? It's like
I think that there were in the first round. In the first round, I think that there were like 6% of the votes were in the
yeah,
first round were invalid. That's a lot. That's a
that's a
lot.
lot. Yeah,
It even decreases the total turnout. I mean, because
yeah.
they're technically counted as people that voted.
Exactly, exactly. But that very much shows also the anger, but also yeah, not really apathy, but people do show up, but also just the anger about that there are no viable options in the ballot for people feel. And maybe that's also a good connection to the next question I wanted to make, because what's in your opinion and your assessment the main reason that people feel this apathy and this anger towards politics in North Macedonia? And how is also the EU candidacy process tied into this? Because there may also be other reasons, more domestic oriented. So, what's your assessment there?
Look, all reasons are always domestic. I mean, people are not so involved in geopolitics, and even the European integration depends how we see the European integration. Of course, as I mean, in the expert community, academia, and civil society, among politicians, European Union is always is sometimes, I mean, very often discussed also as a geopolitical issue, and that's a very important thing. But for, let's say, ordinary voters, geopolitics doesn't matter a lot. So all issues that make the people disillusioned are also connected to the process of European integration, but can be also seen as purely domestic issues. First of all is the rule of law. I mean, it's the organized crime and corruption. I mean, people I would put it very bluntly. I mean, do not believe that there is a real political will and a real action against organized crime and corruption. So that's that people do not believe the institutions. I mean, the data we get about perceptions, I mean, perceptions are not a real proof about the performance of the institutions, but it's important in a democratic society because in the end, it's all about legitimacy, and legitimacy is about perceptions. And the numbers are very low. Second thing is that the country is also facing some economic problems now. It is, of course, most of these problems are imported because we are very much dependent on the economic performance of the European countries, especially in the automobile industry, because we have many factories where people work for the automobile factories in, let's say, in Germany. And since EU countries are not performing in economic terms so well, we also feel strongly that. Uh, Older generation is disappointed that the youth left the country. The youth is disappointed that clientelistic networks are very functional, unfortunately. It's not that there are not vacant job places, there are, but as I said, people do not feel that they really are treated equal when it comes to different issues, beginning from, let's say, high corruption, but also continuing with the issues like education, healthcare, social care, infrastructure, access to institutions. Political parties are generally delegitimized. They are seen as corrupted organizations, as I would say, criminal cartels by many. And more and more people that stay in the country decide to live in their own bubble, created bubble, and they are practically detached from the societal life. We see that in very low level of societal activism. I mean, very few people are really active in civil society organizations because I mean, they believe, unfortunately, in cynicism. They think that nothing can be changed and that things are as they are, and that it's a waste of time and energy to invest in something that is aiming to change the circumstances. That's a very dangerous context for authoritarian tendencies or for so-called saviors, populists that would even leave the ordinary populism and enter a clear authoritarianism when they in which someone will promise people that strong hand will solve all our issues. That it shows a clear democratic backsliding and deficit of trust of people in the democracy. And
Yeah,
regarding the European Union, you asked me. I mean, yeah, look, I mean, we got a progress report for this year. The progress report is not good. Uh, not, not the reforms were not implemented at all, or not implemented as they were supposed to be implemented. People in majority still support, although Euroscepticism is growing, but it's not a traditional Euroscepticism, it's more like Eurocynicism. So they support that we should join the European Union, but they don't believe that we will join the European Union. Very few people believe that there are realistic prospects, especially in near future, I mean, in realistically near future, for us to join the European Union. So this is a kind of I don't call it Euroscepticism. I always call it Eurocynicism, and it also contributes to that because they think that there is no prospect in the country, and that is why many decide to leave the country and go somewhere abroad where they think they can secure a better future for themselves and especially for their families.
yeah, exactly. And it seems that the economy is also one of the main important reasons also to change maybe the cynicism around. Would you also feel that this Euro cynicism is also very much in relation to like people also not feeling that the EU itself is standing for like a better future? Because maybe there was an idea there was in the beginning years of EU integration, people very much felt that if we do these reforms and go to EU, we will very much, yeah, it will very much create a better future. But maybe also the role of the EU and how the EU relates towards North Macedonia also change maybe this into a whole cynical kind of sphere. Is that something that you also feel happening?
Yes, yes, of course. I mean, before we continue, when I described this relation between Western Balkan countries and the European Union, there was so much optimism. I mean, we had support for the European Union. At one point, it was 98%. So these 2%, they were statistical error, most probably. So almost 100% of the people. And in most of the country, except for Serbia, maybe, there was also in Serbia majority support, but never so high. But at that time, the European integration was perceived, I would say, a bit naive, but with a lot of optimism for the future. And I remember when I was a kid, I mean, in the beginning of 90s, there was a Disney cartoon about some family of mice from Russia that decided to emigrate to America on a boat, on a ship. And the father he was convincing his wife and the children, the little mice, he said, there are no cats in America and the streets are full with cheese. And when they arrived in New York and they departed the boat, the first thing they saw it was a big fat cat, and there was no cheese on the streets. So it is a bit like that, in the meantime, many people got disillusioned that there are big fat cats in the EU and there is not free cheese on the street. And that is how the people got disillusioned. First of all, the people to believe that the European Union does not genuinely want to integrate our countries, and that is also the European Union itself to blame because there were a lot of broken promises. For us in North Macedonia, the year of 2019 was a key year when we thought after the Prespa agreement that there are not any more obstacles of identity nature to continue. And all of a sudden, we got the French veto at that time and search for new methodology. And when finally this new methodology was released, then came the dispute with Bulgaria, which is a dispute that is identity issue in its nature, and that created a lot of anger among people, and a lot of people said, okay, if this is the condition to join the European Union, we won't join the European Union under such conditions. Of course, this was used also from the negative, from the propaganda against the EU, the Eurosceptic propaganda, also coming from famous propaganda centers from the East, that actually built a narrative around these problems and said, you see, I mean, they don't want you because you don't belong to the Western world. And you know how these identity issues go, connecting it to race, religion, and all these issues that would create even more anger. And unfortunately, the issue of European integration that used to be an issue around which there was consensus in the country became an issue of division. I mean, the most of the campaign ahead of the parliament elections 2024 and during the elections was who is patriot and who is traitor regarding the EU, who would give anything just to join some kind of EU, and who will go to EU with dignity. That was the campaign. And then this issue around which there was a huge political consensus became an issue of division. And it is still like that, because the main thing we have to do now, according to the so-called French proposal that is now official proposal of Brussels, is to implement constitutional changes, include the Bulgarian community or minority in the constitution. And that per se is not such a big problem, but then many, I mean, especially the government, asks the question whether this is a final request from Bulgaria, and they look for some kind of guarantees. And we know that no guarantees, I mean, real guarantees can be issued by the European Union, because other requests may come on table, for example, the rule of law and corruption. So I'm very much afraid that legitimate concerns over this issue, whether the identity issue that is clearly outside of the Copenhagen criteria will follow, that these legitimate concerns may become an excuse for not continuing with other reforms, especially the reforms in the area of rule of law. Because when you have such kind of problems where more or less everyone is concerned, that creates an atmosphere that creates a fertile ground for irresponsible politicians to say, okay, we have a problem because of identity and we won't continue the accession talks or the integration process, and using that all other reforms that have nothing to do with this issue will be stopped. And if you read carefully the progress report issued by the European Commission, you can see that it's not only these issues that is a problem, or the constitutional changes that are not implemented. There are many issues in many other areas that are in no way connected to this issue. So we see that, I mean, this fear that they have is becoming a reality. One issue is used as an excuse not to continue with the reforms.
Yeah. Yeah, clear. And yeah, there it becomes like kind of a big swamp of all these things that has to be changed, but there's the political legitimacy is also very much under pressure because of the political situation as a whole. And it creates like a situation in which this Euro cynicism is the best way to describe it. And yeah, I maybe a final question on this, and this also to go out of this cynicism is of course really important. And what would you be for in your idea the best kind of proposals or ways that progressive oriented actors in North Macedonia should advocate for to also get out of this cynical feeling, cynical approach regarding politics, regarding EU future, etc. Is this the economy? Is that a way, for example, investment, kind of in that way to go out of this like cynical view on politics?
More than economy. Of course, economy and social issues are traditional issues for the progressives, but I think that the progressives, I mean, we need more than that. The second issue is that social democrats must rebuild the trust, not only in the society, but trust in themselves that they are capable of putting. We cannot solve the organized crime and high corruption. Let's be honest about that, but putting it under control. I mean, at least decreasing it and putting it under control to a reasonable level. Then it's putting also under control the influence of clientelism and clientelistic networks. I mean, showing another type of leadership. And finally, it's not just empty talking about European Union, but a genuine will. I mean, if the people see a genuine will to implement some of the reforms, I think that the majority of the people will support and are supporting the implementation of these reforms. On the side of the European Union, I hope that since there is a consensus that we need some kind of guarantees, I hope that the Council will be able to provide some kind of reassurance. I would say guarantee is a too strong word, that after the constitutional changes are implemented, no bilateralizations, especially not in the field of identity, would follow this process, and that for North Macedonia, the Copenhagen and only the Copenhagen criteria set by the European Union would be applicable. Because after the name change, the patience of the people for more compromises on identity issues. I mean, we may think whatever we want about identity. For some people, it's not so important, but for the majority of people, it is very important. And let's be honest, the example of North Macedonia is a very negative example when it comes to such kind of issues. Yes, we can rationalize all these bilateral disputes, but this is, I think, the first example in history where a country had to change its name because someone requested, not voluntarily, because someone requested. And now we have a situation where we are, I mean, if you put aside the constitutional changes, debating historical events from beginning from 9th century until the late 20th century. I mean, I don't think that this is a good way. This is a good way to support the European integration. And this is, if the European Union allows such processes to continue, I can assure you that this kind of disputes you'll see everywhere in the Balkans, in Eastern Europe also, because there are also many unresolved these identity issues in Eastern Europe and within the Union. So it's not. This is the way how this is the way how former Yugoslavia dissolved. So my message for the EU is to not allow yourself to become former Yugoslavia, because former Yugoslavia in the end dissolved because of this unresolved identity issues and attacks from all sides about identity, culture, ethnicity, religion. This is a very, very dangerous field.
Yeah, yeah, it's certainly the case, and in that sense, and as you also very clearly say, is that this is very much not part of Copenhagen criteria at all. And in that sense, it's also important, I think, the proposals now coming also, I think, out of the Commission to decrease the power of veto in all these small parts of the EU accession process, because there may be like 100 different moments that countries have veto right in this accession process in all these different chapters and clusters, and that could be also a big improvement for countries to progress if if there's not a veto in all these different small moments, but only in the beginning and the end, for example.
I think it will be, although I have serious doubts. I already suspect several countries that would veto such a reform. But let's
Yeah,
see. Let's hope.
yeah, there's something to definitely also push for to make the process much better that way. So thanks for that very clear overview. I think I've got one more question from the Q&A, and then we're also already 45 minutes into this webinar, so time goes always very quickly, and talking about this, and there's much more to say still, but I think that will be the final question, unless there are any other questions from the audience still. This question is about the Kochani nightclub fire. We didn't touch upon it. It's a terrible tragedy happening in March 25, of course. And the question is, how did the Kochani nightclub fire influence the local elections? So did they play did this play a role in the recent local elections?
Look, first about the Kochani nightclub fire, it is a tragic example of how all institutions failed. Because if you look at the chain of events from, I don't know, 2012, when this nightclub started to work, it is a chain of corruption year after year of many institutions. So, I mean, if you want to make a picture of corruption, that's definitely this is the night when this club was burning and we lost more 63 people in that club. Whether it influenced the elections, many thought it will influence, but in the end the governing party won there. So uh, on Saturday there will be again protests by the parents who are now demanding justice because the court proceedings just started. I hope that uh, the court proceedings will be, I mean, will be effective. I would say they will last for because there are many convicted people, but I hope that there will be an effective court proceeding, that it will not prolong more than is necessary to finish the process. But whether it affected the local elections, not much,
Mm.
because I mean governmental parties won the elections. They needed a second round to win. There was an independent candidate that was challenging them on that ground, but in the end they won. So if you look at from that perspective, not too much.
Which is, yeah, quite interesting to see. What's your assessment why that's the case? Is it because the whole political system is, people feel the whole political system is responsible for this corruption and it's not really targeted towards one or another party? Or
I mean, two reasons. First, people are blaming everyone, I mean, all. And uh, also, the turnout in Kochani was very low. So this apathy decided again the election results. And second, I must admit that is the clientelism. That is even stronger than the tragedy. So this both reasons contributed to
yeah,
the outcome we saw.
which is also in its own way a tragedy, but indeed different. But that's also indeed very much influenced the political dynamic. Okay, clear. So thanks for that clear answer, Alexander. I think we've gone through the main questions and some questions from the chat as well. There's much more to discuss still, I think. We definitely need to follow up this up next year. Also, when there are new developments, will definitely happen because we see in North Macedonia, which is very important, the the main parties that ruled for such a long time also losing in a way, the legitimacy decreasing, and it's indeed, as you say, also very a dangerous breeding ground for like authoritarian democratic backsliding. And there's also new ways of campaigning for the older parties needed. So I think that's very interesting to follow what kind of actors are able also to create these new forms of campaigning, but keep in a positive way and not cynical or damaging democracy in that regard. So we'll definitely keep in touch about that. And yeah, and also very much the role of the European Union remains key there and the messaging. So as we know, yeah, any final comments from your side, Alexander? Things you might want to share with the audience still?
Yeah, I mean, it is important that I mean our friends everywhere in Europe that keep attention not only on North Macedonia, but also on the region. I do hope that at least some of the countries will manage somehow to become members of the European Union, even if it's under special conditions. That we are hearing some proposals for a kind of gradual membership, what is now on table, because that would send really a strong signal. And I always repeat that why is important Southeastern Europe and Western Balkans. I mean, we are not the main players. We will never be in the European Union. Of course, EU has. I mean, member states and the union has big problems also inside in the union on the eastern borders of the union. But I always say, I mean, one may die from a major heart attack, you know, but one may die also from a pollution of blood from the small finger of the left leg. So we are maybe that's a small finger of the left leg. We are not the heart of Europe, but I mean, not paying attention to the region and not keeping the region close to the European Union can have also very negative consequences on the security, I would say, and development in Europe. So that it's a very utilitaristic argument for Europe, but I think that the European Union mustn't forget about six remaining countries in the Western Balkans, because it's for the good of these countries, but also for the good of Europe. I hope that this momentum that is now there will continue, and that it will become a reality in foreseeable future.
Yeah, thank you, Alexander. And indeed, as you say, like in a bloc, you are as strong as the weakest part in that sense of the bloc, and we see it also internally in the EU with democratic backsliding within the union, countries vetoing every many proceedings, and that's also caused the union to be very, very weak and slow in decision making. So there's much to do there. We'll definitely keep in touch on that. So thank you so much for this time. Thank you so much for all this information on North Macedonia. It's really important to have the update here. I very much encourage the viewers to watch and to check out the analysis you will write on the website of CESP Balkan Folks, which will also link down below in the description. So, and also for much more analysis and information, you should definitely check out that website as well. And in the meantime, let's keep in touch, Alexander. Thank you, and thank you also to the viewers, and hope to catch up soon.